Hi, ever wonder what it's like to work another profession or live in the underworld? Listen to unsuspecting riders give a 10 to 15 minute personal masterclass as I spontaneously interview them as they enter my taxi. I'm your host, Simon Rushton, and this is Taxi Chronicles. Morning. Yes, we're back with another episode, another story. Yes, today we have a sports football journalist. I've messed up the title already, but I'm sure he's going to correct me. And he's going to tell us all about his business, how he got into the industry, and what a typical day is like, and what motivates him. So nice to have you here today, Sebastian.
Hello.
So how did you get into the industry?
Well, I got into the industry through different work placements that I did when I was still living in France. I grew up in France. My dad's French, my mum's English. And when I was at school, I had to do placements in companies, and I was into journalism. So I decided to do some work placements in TV channels.
Okay.
In Paris, and that's when I really got into it properly, and I made contacts and all that. And then I went to university in Southampton in England for 3 years, and I studied on a sports journalism degree.
Were you brought up in England or Paris?
I was brought up in France, north of Paris.
North of Paris, okay.
And
but yet you came to England to study.
Yes.
Why was that?
Because I thought that the level of the football in England is a lot more interesting than France. And obviously I had an English mother and I'd never really lived in England, so I thought it was a good opportunity to come here and discover a new culture and live here properly.
Okay. So you had your heart set on football from a long time ago, really?
Football and sport in general. I was very I used to watch football a lot when I was young. I knew everything about the Premier League. I used to watch all sorts of leagues around the world, around Europe, Champions League, Premier League, and I just really liked it. I've always been into communicating and speaking and presenting, and I used to do theatre when I was young, and then when there was a show at school I would always be the first one to be there and things like that, so it was kind of the obvious way to go.
You knew your calling at a young age.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
That's good. So are you a sports player? Are you a football player yourself? Do you play football, Sunday league, or whatever, that kind of thing?
No. I've never been a good player. The closest I got was being a sub on the school's fourth the school's fourth team that used to play once every 2 years.
Okay.
So I've never been a big player. I play a lot of golf though, and I used to play some tennis as well.
So what does it involve being a sports journalist?
A sports journalist, as I am at the moment, it depends. There's lots of forms of sports journalism. There's writers who write for newspapers, magazines, or online websites. Then you've got radio, and then you've got television, which are considered as broadcasting, and that's the area I work in, broadcasting.
Okay.
So you can either work as a freelance, which means that you get paid for every day you work, and you can work for as many places as you want, or you can have a contract with like a TV channel or a newspaper, and that means you work for them every day.
I suppose that where you work for someone every day, you're tied in, but you're guaranteed a wage. When you're a contractor, you're free, but you're only as good as your last job.
Yeah, exactly. When you're a freelance like me, you basically rely on every performance let's say, on television being good enough so that they call you again the following day.
Is it a rough business to be in as a freelancer?
For me, it's not, because I'm a freelance, but I've got a very good relation with the channel I work for, which means, and also I speak 2 languages. I speak French and English, and I'm one of the only journalists who, for the channel I work for, who are based in the UK. And because of the current times, they can't send anyone over to cover the games. So I'm pretty much certain that I'm going to be working every week for them. So that's the situation at the moment. But then when you're a freelance, in normal times, at the moment I don't really have time because I work almost all the time with the situation. But in normal times, you need to work as a freelance for about 4 different companies to be on the safe side.
Yeah, so if you get dropped by one, you know that you need to get picked up by another.
Yeah, or you can work for all of them at the same time, and like when one of them doesn't need you, the other one will need you. You see what I mean? Mm-hmm. So it's a case of. But what I like about being a freelance is that you've got a lot of flexibility. Yeah, you don't have to. Like, if you want to take a day off for Christmas, you can. If you want to take a week off to go on holiday somewhere, you can. Of course, you're not getting paid for it, but then you can manage your time and make sure you're doing more work beforehand to...
Yeah, that's like this job.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand. So what would you say you've learnt from this industry that you wish you knew when you had started?
That's a great question, actually. A lot of people ask me that question, and I never quite know what to answer because you're learning every day, really.
What have you learned up to date?
Well, I've learned that first of all, you mustn't be focused on one thing. You need to keep your you need to keep your barriers down and be prepared to jump into anything, because especially in television, like, there's not many opportunities and you need to take what's available. So you can't just say, I want to be a commentator on tennis, or I want to be a presenter on English football. You need to be prepared to do anything that you get asked to start with. And I think when I started, I was quite focused on the one thing that I wanted to do, and then gradually I've discovered new areas of the job, and I've really enjoyed it.
That's good. Would you encourage other people to get into that field?
If I'm truly honest, I wouldn't.
Okay, it's interesting.
Because there's only one job, and at the moment I've got it.
Okay, if there was other opportunities and you was more of a sharing man.
No, honestly, I would recommend it if you're into sport and you love communicating and things like that. I think it would be a great it's a great industry, honestly, and there's thousands of jobs in journalism. I'm lucky to have the job that's in front of the camera, but behind the cameras there's hundreds of people working in newsrooms and making sure that the programs that go on air are structured properly and all that. So I highly recommend this industry if you like sharing things and if you like to share emotions with the rest of the world.
So do you run your own social media as well, like put your interviews on there? No, I don't. I mean, I put the links to my interviews on social media. Okay. But obviously the channel I work for owns the rights to everything. So I don't have the ability to publish stuff myself, because everything I do is done through the channel I work for. They have the rights to the English Premier League, so I cover the league for them. Yeah, but they have the rights. Yeah. So you can only publish something under the brand. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Under the brand, whether it's Sky B or whatever they're called.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm with you. So would you, if you could do it all again, would you do anything different?
Well, it's very similar to the question you asked me earlier. No, I wouldn't do it any different. I definitely made the right decision to come to uni in England, because the level of journalism here, in my opinion, is higher than in France.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it was the right decision to come here to learn. And no, I mean, I'm very lucky. A lot of the people who I went to uni with, because I graduated in the summer, and a lot of the people who I went to uni with, they don't have a job right now, and I got my first job in television at the end of my first year in uni. So I was already interviewing the best players in the world when I was still at university, and I'm still doing it now. But some of the people who were at uni with me, they're either working at Tesco's or they're sitting in their sofa at home all day at the minute because of the situation. So no, I wouldn't do it any differently. I'm very privileged to be where I am.
Yeah, I see that. And would you say 80% of that is based on your language, your bilingual capability as well?
Yeah, it's based on that, and it's also based on the work experience that I did when I was in France, because I built the contacts.
So they didn't apply themselves then, you could say?
Yeah, I built the contacts when I was doing like 1 week at a channel in Paris or something. Like I knew people and I added them to my like followers on LinkedIn and things like that. And then when you just see opportunities and they see your name pop up, they just know you, so they trust you.
Yeah, I like that guy. I like his work ethic. I understand that. So you're a real forward thinker then. This is great.
Yeah, I've always had my objectives set, and I've always made sure I reach them. So at the moment, I've never been disappointed because I've always managed to reach my goals. But obviously, I expect there to be more difficult times in the future.
Yeah, but with your mentality and your attitude, let alone your work ethic, I'm sure it may be a bump in the road of life, but it won't be a crasher, let's say.
Yeah.
A write-off. Yeah. I'm very happy for you. You sound like you're
Well, thank you.
very, very well. Some of the kind of people who say, you said you interviewed the top players in the world.
Yeah.
Who do you really love to interview? And do you build a relationship with them? Like, they know you on a first name basis as
Well, that's a very good question. It's very difficult, especially in football these days. I've done all sorts of interviews. I've made documentaries I've made a documentary about table tennis when I was at uni, which won the award for the best student documentary in England.
Mm-hmm.
Sports documentary, and that was with people who were relatively famous, but aren't famous enough to have all the protection around them and all that bubble of like media officers that stop you from asking certain questions and things like that. So when you're asking questions to someone who's very down to earth and who's very open to have a conversation with you rather than an interview, that's what I really enjoy. In football, it's very different. After the game just now, I was sent 2 people to interview by both clubs, but I had no power to decide who that was going to be, and I'm only allowed to ask 3 questions.
So you have to make it really...
So you have to make it really, like, you have to make sure that you're asking the right question, and you can't really... If you want to dig in a bit into one of the questions, you can't, because you've got to go straight to the next one.
If that's dictated to you, but what is the conditions? If you don't go by that 3 questions or those I assume, and correct me if I'm wrong here, that they tell you what you can't ask them.
Yeah, but basically that's something that you kind of know when you get used to working especially on the Premier League. You know what you can't ask before you've even started the interview, and it's part of the rights. Basically, the reason why it's like that is because the channel I work for has purchased the rights to the Premier League for billions of pounds, and in the contract it says post-match interviews, 3 questions, the player you get given. So it's not me that contacts the people to interview them after a game. It's the clubs that send them out because it's part of a contract.
So the club knows who they want to promote, who they
yeah,
want to
so I work for a French channel, so I want people who speak French, players who speak French. If there's only one player who speaks French on the pitch that day and that he's not played well, I'm not going to get him in an interview. So I'm going to get an English-speaking player or someone else. And in that case, I won't be happy because we're sharing it with a French audience. And obviously they don't understand English. So they won't want someone, unless we put subtitles, but that's the only way around it.
But surely nowadays, even though English is our national language, it's more of a business language. So, like with music videos and entertainment, wouldn't you say a lot of the younger generation, especially the younger generation, know English or English in a certain degree?
Yeah, I mean, they would know it, but as a French channel, you can't expect
I see.
your audience to speak English. You have to, they pay for a subscription to our channel, so we have to deliver stuff in French. Mm-hmm. So, especially like traditional TV channels like mine, like younger generations don't watch those channels so much anymore. It's mainly the older generations. Youngsters are all on social media.
Yeah, YouTube.
Like youngsters, they only watch like 12 minutes on average of a football game. They don't watch the whole game anymore. They watch the highlights because they don't have time. They're too busy being on Twitter and things like that.
That's very true. I wouldn't count myself as a youngster, but I watched the Mike Tyson highlight match because it wasn't that long. I think I clicked forward some match rounds. Sorry.
Yeah.
But I haven't watched the AJ one. I didn't watch that. I didn't. And normally, you would have traditionally, when the old Frank Bruno and all those boxers, you would watch the whole thing. But now you just say, okay, what do I need to watch?
Yeah.
And then you're gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, in that respect. Okay. Last question. What impact do you want to have on the world?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, my job as a journalist is to share information and share the emotions, in this case, of a sporting event. So, if I can share the emotions of what's going on inside a stadium for someone who can't necessarily afford to get tickets to go to a game or to travel the world to come and watch their favourite team, if I can share those emotions through the camera of what's going on in the stadium and the information that people need to know, I mean, I will have ticked the box of saying I've succeeded in my mission.
Mm-hmm. And that just brings to mind that, like, for instance, in Africa there's a lot of French-speaking countries, and I assume that you broadcast to those countries as well.
Yeah,
so
totally.
You have a large audience, and you have quite a diverse audience.
Yeah.
You said you may be an old channel, but I'm sure there's some young kid who's watching it because it's his only source of being able to watch the. Yeah. Can I ask you something? Obviously, as a podcaster, you're like a god in asking questions, asking the right questions.
Yeah.
How do you decide? You said you're given 3 questions. You see the performance of the game, so you must get an idea of they're not going to give me this guy to talk to today. He will play badly. How do you decide what questions are you going to ask? Do you have them pre-planned?
Well, we have a big team, you know. There's over 100 people in Paris in the newsroom who work for our channel. So before the game's even started, we've already got questions established because we know what answer we want from a certain player to show in a certain show. So in this case, the questions I don't have to do much thinking because the questions have already been planned by the newsroom in Paris.
Okay.
But sometimes when I do games for other channels, let's say it's happened a few times, you just ask questions about the game. Really, it's just a reaction, an immediate reaction after the game.
Yeah. Okay. I see what I mean. But you spoke about the team. That sounds interesting. It's not like, would you have somebody who's a bit of a psychiatrist or somebody who's really into the human mind who will be looking at knowing these players and think, yeah, we should ask this if we want that response? Or is it just
No, there's not that deep. It can be that deep when you're doing like a proper long interview. Let's say during the week at the training ground when we go and meet the player to do like a 20-minute interview. But after the game like that, it wouldn't be that complex. It would just be, why did your team lose today? What did you do that was wrong? What could you have done better? How is this result going to impact your next game in 6 days? Things like that. It's just simple questions.
Those questions sound like something you could ask the manager. Is it a manager or a coach?
Yeah, the manager as well. We either get a player or a manager. It depends who the club want to send out.
And depending on their performance.
Mm.
Okay. Well, thanks a lot for that interview.
No problem.
It's much appreciated. And I hope it's been up to your standards. We hope you liked that interview. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to get the latest daily episode. Ever considered investing in the continent with the fastest growing economy and population on Earth? The same continent that holds 30% of the world's known natural resources? Then listen to our sister podcast, Africa Investor Stories, where you will hear real investors with real stories from around the world share their experience of investing in Africa. We post Monday and Thursday at 10 a.m.